Hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I am your host, Connor. With me, as always, is Phil.
Oh.
And we are here today talking about a very good fight night. Corey-Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov was the main event, and the entire main card was pretty much full of interesting, relevant fights. Stuff beyond the main card as well. Some of it, at least, lived up to expectations or exceeded them. And also a card, Phil, where we were spectacularly wrong about, I think, everything we made a pick for. Am I incorrect about that? Other than Chiesa-Ferguson. We talked about that a bit.
Yeah, did we make many picks on this one? I thought we just picked the main event.
I think you're right. It's just okay. You're safe, Phil. You're protected.
I probably would have been wrong. I would have been wrong.
Yeah.
I think. Maybe. I would have picked against Sharabullet out of spite.
Out of spite, exactly. Yeah, which we may have to.
Alvarez-Brener to be large.
Which he was, but
so yeah, I don't want to excuse myself. I would have been wrong for a whole bunch of this stuff.
Well, I talked about a lot of this card with the old Zayd and Simon, and he thinks he's so smart. Well, how come he let me make all those bad picks? I ask you.
Yeah.
Because I was just wrong all over the damn shop with my predictions on this card. Wrong, I will say, in very interesting ways. I feel like, as you hope will be the case with a good card, we learned a good bit from these fights, and nowhere more so than in the main event, which was, again, Umar Nurmagomedov versus Corey-Sandhagen. We sort of lamented the fact that Sandhagen, really through nobody's fault, at this point, has just, been on the cusp of a title shot for ages.
It is someone's fault. It's the UFC matchmakers.
I mean, the Cheeto one we pointed to, but also, like, now that it's him and Merab.
The Cheeto fight annoyed me at the time, and quite a lot. And everything that has happened since then has simply made it look like a worse and worse decision. Everything.
Well, Corey-Sandhagen would probably agree with you. You'll have to excuse me, by the way, listeners. I will turn away from the mic to cough a few times throughout this episode. I'm slightly sick. Nothing too bad, but my apologies for that. Yeah, Corey-Sandhagen on the cusp of a title shot for a long time. Didn't materialize. At this point in time, it's like you can't argue that he's clearly a better choice than Merab, so fair enough. And here he takes on an admirably difficult fight, which I thought he actually just pretty clearly lost. And I have to say, as has been the case with, maybe these like racist teens who keep creating new accounts to like yell at me online, maybe they're right. Maybe I do have a problem with Dagestanis because I keep underestimating them, Phil. I just keep doing it. I just can't quite ever seem to credit that all these various people, many of whom I will point out are coming out of the team founded by Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, who I think, even in death, is enjoying one of the best legacies of any coach ever in MMA. I just can't quite credit them with being as phenomenally well-rounded as they continue to be. I doubted Islam Makhachev's striking. And now here we're with Umar Nurmagomedov. I was already surprised with his striking when he fought Raoni Barcelos, but I was like, well, how much does that mean? It's a shot, Raoni Barcelos. Here he's going to fight a really good striker. And we're definitely going to talk about some ways in which I think Corey-Sandhagen seriously fell short. And didn't seem to quite understand what he needed to do. But the flip side of that is that this was actually an excellent striking performance from Umar Nurmagomedov, of a kind which I did not see coming. You were going to say.
I don't feel bad about picking Corey-Sandhagen to win this fight, because, as I said, it's the kind of fight where you have to pick Corey-Sandhagen. He is I mean, being a very deserving title challenger in the bantamweight division basically means that you are pretty much indisputably one of like the top 15 to 20 fighters in mixed martial arts as a whole. Like,
yep.
Picking against him would be like picking against, like, I don't know, like Max Holloway. He is someone who has been who has proven to be able to solve matchups at some of the highest level possible. He's proven to be extremely flexible and incredibly tough. Super smart. I could not in all simply couldn't pick someone as relatively untested as Umar Nurmagomedov to beat him. There would be almost no one.
I agree.
Who I would in that situation, unless Umar had just been absolutely effortlessly smoking every single person in some way that was, very was incredibly primed to take advantage of Sandhagen's weaknesses.
Yeah.
I'm just not doing it. I'm never picking someone to basically fight their first fighter at that kind of level, just leap right up to that level and then just win. That just shows you, like, Umar he's the truth.
He is the truth, man. No denying it. This was like a genuine breakout performance. This it reminded me of Topuria Emmett.
Mm-hmm.
Where, like, yes, I've been impressed with this guy. He's been really good up to this point, but I have never seen him win so comprehensively in his first 5-round appointment. And in a fight where he was broadly shut out of the phase in which he's won the vast majority of his fights. He was stuck striking with Corey Sandhagen. He didn't want to be. I mean, that was like it did not go according to plan in that respect, because he was trying to hit those takedowns and he was getting close, and Sandhagen's both defensive wrestling and his scrambling was phenomenal. He really, really kept up with Nurmagomedov almost throughout the entire fight, until the very end, where really he just lost a position because he actually went for like a Hail Mary. He went for something.
He had to do that at that point.
He had to. Yeah. I get that. But this is a fight where Umar was stuck striking with Corey Sandhagen, and he aced it. He was really, really good on the feet. I will still point to some technical things that I don't love and yada, 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 but like conceptually, this was a phenomenal striking performance from Umar Nurmagomedov. It really was. You want to talk about controlling a fight on the feet. Nailed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's just an insanely good fighter. It's not really much more to be said. I think there is more to be said.
There's plenty more to be said. Yes.
But it also kind of fits under that. It all kind of fits under that umbrella. This was and I've seen some debates over, is this, has Corey become too passive? Did he fight this fight too passively and so on?
I wanted to talk about that.
And I'm not sure, I'm not sure that being more aggressive as he was in the last round of this fight wouldn't have simply got him into trouble. I don't know. I find it harder to say that, like, this isn't a kind of this isn't to at least some extent the kind of this guy's just kind of steadily losing a fight. I wish he'd just do more and win kind of thing, because Sandhagen is a very, very clever fighter, and the rounds that he fought that he was losing were nonetheless, like, still very competitive. A lot of them were very close.
Yeah.
I think mostly it was the fact that Nurmagomedov could, like, put a capper on them with some ground control and some, 1 or 2 clean strikes that would turn the judges' eyes. But I think it's really tough to ask someone in that situation where it's like you're just feeling like you're just on the edge of being able to figure someone out, to just not do that, to just instead just go for them. Because I think one of the things that I realized just watching this fight is that Corey Sandhagen is, at the end of the day, he's just too slow for a lot of these bantamweights.
Umar was much faster than him, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Notably.
I was like, that was really, going back to the Yarn fight, I was like, that is really the difference, isn't it? He's just physically slower than these guys, and he cannot figure out a way to initiate on them without something coming back much faster. And you could see him sort of get increasingly trapped in that over time.
Yeah.
You know, he started off and it was mostly the low kicks, and he was kind of chopping away at Umar and still being able to defend the takedowns coming back at him.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't really get into punching exchanges with him. But then, like, Umar started sometimes taking him down off the kicks, but also just like counter low kicking him. Sometimes it's like he would check and then immediately return with his own low kick. Just started to kind of out kicking him on the feet. And then it just became this sort of weird issue where, like, Sandhagen just could not figure out how to open up on him without getting countered.
Yeah. I haven't yet made my mind up about this, because of course this does fit into a now long-running narrative of fighters working with Trevor Whitman.
Mm-hmm.
And then having performances where there's a feeling that there's not a lot of fire there. For his part, I can't tell you what influence his training might have had, because again, it's hard for me to say that it's impossible that Trevor is having this effect on fighters. We've seen enough examples to be like, maybe MMA fighters are just too dumb for Trevor Whitman. Like, I'm pretty sure he's a good boxing coach. I know he knows what he's talking about, but maybe this explains capital T technicality in MMA. Like, these MMA fighters are learning the right things, but then they get tunnel vision and they just can't figure out how to, like, be smart and safe and also then still win the fight. I don't know. But I do think the thing is there are ways that Corey Sandhagen, I think, could have dealt with the, yes, obvious speed advantage that Umar had. Not his only advantage, by the way. I thought this was a clinical positional striking performance from Umar Nurmagomedov. Just like despite being in there against a taller guy with longer reach, which we thought would be a big factor, it had the feeling of him not letting Corey Sandhagen in.
Yep.
Sandhagen just couldn't enter on the smaller man. And it wasn't just speed. It was that he's like just staying at the right angle, keeping himself behind his jab, moving laterally and maintaining distance. Very simple, very consistent positional work on the feet from Umar.
Yeah.
On the other hand,
anyways, it was a much kind of cleaner. It was a much cleaner performance than like Yarn's win over Sandhagen.
Oh, absolutely.
Mostly just sort of forced Sandhagen out of the fight.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just didn't let him back in. But, on the other hand, there are ways to deal with the advantages that Umar had here. And I can't help myself, I can't help but wonder whether Sandhagen has lost a bit of that. Because Sandhagen used to be markedly a guy who did a lot of throwaway volume.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's he probably hit upon that unconsciously. I mean, I don't know. He's a thoughtful guy. Maybe he did realize this on a conscious level, but it probably just occurred to him as a logical way to fight because he was fighting a bunch of smaller, faster guys. And he needed to make up for that difference by doing a bunch of stuff that wasn't entirely committal so that he could get reactions, so that he could time them despite their speed. I think of a great, still I think underrated great boxer by the name of Mike McCallum, who was one of the best boxers in the 80s. For a long time was really kind of right outside the sort of Four Kings echelon, and had a series of fantastic fights despite being a very old man with a young and incredibly athletic James Toney. If you've not watched Mike McCallum, folks, go watch Mike McCallum. But Mike McCallum is a technician, a great counterpuncher, a slick defensive fighter, also happens to have an incredible chin. In a lot of ways, he reminds me of Corey Sandhagen. And McCallum was notable for his use of techniques like pawing jabs. Because at the end of the day, if you talk about all the strikes that Mike McCallum threw that were committed strikes, he was pretty low output. He really wanted to draw you out and counter you, so he didn't commit to a lot. But his hands were very busy. And there was a lot of shit forcing you to react that you had to deal with. And I think Sandhagen used to be more like that. You know, so what, I'm slower than you. Here's 8 punches in a row from a long distance. And as soon as you make a move that shows that you respect one of them, then I'm going to pounce with something I actually put my weight into. And this was a notably one and done performance, I felt, from Corey Sandhagen. Even when he was getting more aggressive. Like the left hook, Sandhagen's got a good one, and he landed it a lot. And he, never followed it up. He never put a right hand behind the hook. Nor did he really set it up. It's just like the opening was there, and he just would sling it in. And then increasingly as the fight went on, he just got countered for it. But if this look from Sandhagen was entirely down to Umar, you would expect that those counters would be the thing that would convince Sandhagen not to follow up on the hook. That would make him more sort of hesitant with actually building layers on his attacks. The opposite is true. It actually took Umar a while to get a good read on that left hook and not only defend it, but start answering it. Not until probably round 4 did he really seem to have had it figured out. That does suggest to me that maybe Sandhagen has gone a bit astray here with his technical development, that he was not able to access a type of pressure that used to kind of be his hallmark. That's how it felt to me.
Yeah.
You know?
I think, it's entirely possible. I mean, this is also just part of the development of fighters over time, right? We talk about it a lot, is that everyone just becomes more...
Yeah.
As you get older, you just naturally become more conservative. You want to win more cleanly. You want to take less risk. And in Sandhagen's case, that's been, both the development of his offensive wrestling game and, the sort of lowering of his volume. So I don't know whether that's like Trevor Whitman or whether that's just like... Because that feels very much... It feels very much to me like Sandhagen is definitely in charge of his own development in a way that, like, Rose Namajunas, for example, is not. Yeah.
Rose is perhaps more impressionable, is the impression I get, and more dependent.
Yeah, I mean, I felt for Sandhagen for this one, because, I think he really does think of himself, not without reason, as, like, a smart, intelligent fighter.
Yeah.
He just couldn't. He just could not figure a way to beat Umar Nurmagomedov safely.
Yeah.
At all. Like, he would have had to have... Because at the points where he tried to go, like, deeper into exchanges with Umar, in the 4th and 5th round, Umar was perfectly happy to just, like, kind of yarn him. Mm-hmm. He would just, throw 2 or 3 sharper, straighter punches and just drive him straight back out of the pocket.
Yeah, he's put some nice combinations together.
To ask, like, Sandhagen to do more with that is sort of asking him to, you're asking him to ride his chin to victory.
Yeah.
Which, maybe he could have done. Maybe it was his only chance, but I think all the way up to that 5th round, he definitely felt like the margins were thin enough that he could just find a way to win this.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't there. Umar too smart, too fast, too good.
Can I say how much I love the fact that Umar Nurmagomedov is a lead hand dominant fighter out of both stances?
Mm-hmm.
Southpaw and orthodox, he is super dependent on his jabs. It's rare we get to talk about a fighter having 2 jabs.
Yeah.
This guy does. He uses them really well. I wonder if people will ever get sick of me talking about the jab. I really do. But, I just can't avoid it. When you see a performance like this, how do you not talk about how instrumental it is that, Sandhagen just couldn't get past his lead hand. Umar just hit his center line behind his lead side. And he was always drifting off to the safe angle. which, in good positional form is also how you pursue the opponent's weaker angle, and just staying behind that lead hand and just popping Sandhagen, just lancing him every time he tried to take a step in. At a certain point, Sandhagen started to look like one of the latter-day Tony Ferguson performances, because he was trying to mix it up and do different stuff, but the problem was in that first layer. He just could not crack the range and positional domination enforced by Umar's lead hands, plural.
Yeah. And also, those lead hands working, because both guys were stance switching a lot. It was the times when Umar when they were in open stance, whichever open stance it was, when Umar was just keeping out with the jab, that Sandhagen was looking the most confused.
Yeah.
This isn't a punch you use from this position.
I could not be more impressed with Umar Nurmagomedov, and I remember being, again, very impressed by that win over Raoni Barcelos. But
no kidding.
Just an incredibly strong performance in a phase. I mean, according to the commentary, Umar's core style when he first got into MMA was striking. They said that it was Khabib who insisted that he invest much more time into his wrestling game, that he needed that to be a champion. But now I'm like, maybe this guy should just be outboxing everyone and just that's what this fight became, and then just mixing the takedowns in, and wouldn't you know it, they sort of got more effective in a way because he was just mixing them in. But
now he's almost certainly going to be next in line for a title shot.
He should be.
Weird happens.
He should be.
And in that situation, he's an obviously spectacularly good generalist who's going to be fighting two of the most potent specialists in the UFC at the moment.
Yes.
Whichever one it is. It's either going to be one of the most dangerous strikers in the UFC or one of literally the most indefatigable, uncontrollable wrestler. Yeah.
But I gotta say, if he ended up,
I would still be happy with this. He gets they put him into an eliminate with Figueiredo.
I suppose I'd be happy to see that. Yeah, it's hard not to say though that he has and again, what a crushing disappointment for Sandhagen that Umar one win over him, and it's like, oh, he should get a title shot, right? It seems obvious.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I gotta say, if he were to end up fighting Merab, so long as he proved able to defend the takedowns, I think he could carve him up on the feet. This is exactly the kind of striking that I think is poison for a guy like Merab, whose game is just full of shortcuts, Very little attention paid to the particulars of whatever position he flings himself into. And as far as that was the only thing Umar was paying attention to. You're not allowed to get this close to me for free. You're not allowed to get this angle on me. That's it. Now you figure it out. Because every time you try to do one of those things, every time you try to take a shortcut, I'm just going to pop you with the jab and reestablish the range. Just clinical is the word. A clinical, principled, striking performance from Umar Nurmagomedov over Corey Sandhagen.
Yeah. Blown away.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's what I'm very happy to be wrong about because, if I'm going to be wrong, I want to learn something that I could not have guessed beforehand. This was definitely one of those fights. Speaking of which, we have to praise Sharabullet next. So let's take a break. Let's take a break. When we return, we're going to talk about Sharabullet Magomedov versus Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. We're going to talk about Davis and Figueiredo versus Chiesa-Ferguson. At least you have that one, Phil. You got that to look forward to. And a couple others as well from this really solid Fight Night card after this break.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Well, we said he didn't deserve a co-main event slot. We weren't wrong about that. But we also said, what do the UFC matchmakers think they've got with this guy? He's absolute trash. And unfortunately, I have to say, he did not look like absolute trash in this fight. I'm talking about Sharabullet Magomedov in his fight with Mikhail Oleksiejczuk in the fraudulent co-main event slot of this fight night card. And I thought he looked pretty decent.
Uh-huh.
I really hate to say it.
Yep. He was...
He was pretty decent.
Pretty decent. Reasonably entertaining to watch.
Yeah, that's the main thing. At least this was a fun fight. It was a lot of fun, actually.
Uh-huh.
If I hadn't been chewing off my fingers the entire time, I think I would have really come away from it with a positive feeling.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can see that this guy... You can see now, I guess, why they're pushing him. You can also see that, like, it's not going to last that long.
I mean...
Because this was the... this is essentially the sort of validation of, you know, what if the beat, but with a gas tank, but also, like, without the wrestling or the footwork.
Yeah.
In a worse division. I'm like, okay, I guess.
It'll probably work okay.
Yeah.
As I believe Caposa was making the point on Twitter this last week. By his reckoning, I think he said, it's shocking that there are like 6 fighters, middleweight and up, who actually can use wrestling effectively to win fights.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be built like Sharabullet, if you're going to have this game, you know, you're right at the brink of where it would be completely dysfunctional, but you found your home at 185. I will say, I thought his defensive wrestling also looked better. Looks like he's been working on it.
Uh-huh.
Which he would have to be insane not to, but this is MMA. I've seen that. I've seen fighters felled by the same flaws their entire careers enough times not to just expect it. I will point out that Mikhail Oleksiejczuk is not really a phenomenal wrestler, but he was willing to mix it in, and some of the takedowns that Magomedov gave up in his last 2 fights were like, he didn't even try. He like wasn't even aware that wrestling was allowed, was how the takedowns felt. And that was not the case here. I saw him digging underhooks. I saw him putting in frames. I saw him using the fence to keep himself upright. He actually stuffed some takedowns, which he literally looked incapable of doing before. So that's an upgrade for sure. And with that upgrade in place, with the fact that Oleksiejczuk was not able to wrestle him, it also made me reckon with the very real possibility that all the gas tank problems we saw from Magomedov were largely because he was forced to grapple with people.
Yeah. I mean,
he was tiring out a little bit by the end of a very torridly paced fight.
Yeah, this was Yair Rodriguez. Endurance.
Truly.
In that he can, as they were saying on commentary, like, clearly this guy can just throw kicks and punches forever. But if you put him on his back, he is immediately going to get very, very tired.
But he didn't really spend any time on his back until the very end, by which point he had more than enough energy left just to carve Oleksiejczuk up with the elbows from guard.
Yep.
But yeah, while he was on the feet, Rodriguez is a great comparison because kicks are very energy intensive compared to punches. Just requires a much larger movement of the body and a more dramatic recovery and everything. Anybody, if you want to test this, go do a drill where you throw 10 hard right hands in a row on a bag and then throw 10 hard right body kicks in a row. One will have you gasping for breath more than the other. Also, moving around and bouncing around as much as he did, also very energy intensive. He was doing those things both constantly, nonstop, throughout the entire fight. And like I said, he maybe slowed down a bit, like in the back half of round 3, which is to be expected, because it was a really fast-paced fight. So, impressive stamina in his element, and actually worked on his wrestling defense, and maybe he will actually have a middleweight career. Unfortunately for all of the men in happy relationships out there who might enter the same room as him, this guy may in fact succeed as a UFC middleweight.
Yeah, there's a load of people who you could probably put him in. I mean, the commentary booth was like glazing up how amazingly successful and good he was being.
They didn't seem to notice how much he was getting hit, did they?
Right. He was getting dinged upside the head a lot, but he was mostly just like, to his credit, like throwing a bunch of stuff back that was sharp and painful looking the entire fight and didn't gas out. And Alexejczyk has forgotten how to go to the body.
Well, he tried. It's, he forgot when Magomedov started going to his body way more.
Yeah.
He tried early. I mean, he threw a good amount of left hands to the body, I would say, through the first half of the fight. He got away from it, but I think he was, this is a thing that I really should have considered in picking this fight, had I not been, my eyes clouded by pure hatred. Is that Alexejczyk himself cannot really sustain the pace he needs to win rounds in like a 3-round pressure fight. Like the weird thing about Alexejczyk is that in his pre-UFC career, he was a guy who didn't know what he was doing and he would get beat the fuck up for like a round and a half, and then his opponent would get tired and he would come on. Since coming to the UFC, he's been way more aggressive from the outset, and we've gotten to see that maybe he has a bit of Yoel Romero syndrome, where it's like, where do I spend my energy? One way or the other, he's got a limited pool to draw from.
Yep.
That being said, I thought even he was impressively consistent in the pace, especially as Magomedov started booting him in the gut really, really hard and really consistently. He actually maintained the aggression pretty well, and it still wasn't enough to win.
Yeah, given that he got instantly smoked by Michel Pereira,
right,
going to his body, it sort of says two things. One, that Alexejczyk is very, very mentally tough, and B, that like Sharabullet is probably not potent enough for this to really work in the long term.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm not willing to.
Like his ability to just like wear people down is actually genuinely impressive. But yeah, I mean, there's now like a bunch of fights in this division that I wouldn't be surprised that he if he won them. Put him up against like Abdul Razak Al Hassan or Abus Magomedov or there's loads of sort of like mid to lower mid-range middleweights that I don't know if I would still like. I wouldn't confidently pick Sharabullet to beat, but he could. I wouldn't be that surprised if he beat them now.
You wouldn't
Roman
just like
Kopylov, he can fight.
Yeah.
Wouldn't just automatically pick Roman Kopylov to beat him, although I probably still would.
That sounds like a fun fight. They should do that. Yeah, you wouldn't just pick him to lose out of hand like we. I'm not sure. I didn't even do that.
Hobocop.
Let's do it.
Hobocop I would definitely pick to beat him.
Let's really test that wrestling and grappling. Now that Hobocop has been actually putting the ground control on people, let's test that. You know, I'm not quite sold. Yeah, I'm just going to be asking for all of the cruelest, most difficult matchups imaginable. I was reserved in picking this fight, I will say, because it's hard to have a tremendous amount of confidence in Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. But still, I think it's hard not to agree that this was in many ways a very impressive performance from Magomedov. A super...
like from absolutely rock bottom perceptions. Like, because again, I wouldn't, if you were like afterwards, if you'd said, you know, Sharabullet beat Oleksiejczuk, I would have just been like, yeah, that's why they made that fight.
Mm-hmm.
But it would have been, I would have assumed that would have been because
right, he smoked him, or
yeah. And he just, you know, his confidence was just broken. But he looked like he was genuinely going for the entire time. Like, he looked as durable and as mentally in the fight as he ever has.
Yep.
And yeah, no, he's still just, like, very cleanly lost.
What more can you say?
Yeah, a dramatic over-improvement from someone who I thought was a genuine, like, bottom rung, bottom feeder to someone who is, like, again, someone who I might pick to beat mid-tier middleweights. Whatever that's worth.
God, it makes me mad. You know, when it comes to, like, Umar and Sandhagen, just being dead wrong about that, I'm happy. I got to learn something. I don't want to be wrong about this, but I was, and you know, damn it.
Uh-huh.
Damn it, man.
Yep.
All right. Well,
He's okay.
He's okay.
I mean, the one fortunate thing is that obviously he's clearly not actually good enough to, like, just keep winning. So there will be a point at which all this stuff kind of integrates.
I mean, my confidence is so shaken, Phil. I don't even know if I can hard agree with you on that. Maybe I just don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. You know? Maybe my dad was right. Okay. Well, I mean, I do want to emphasize, because, like, I try not to let these opportunities, I try not to just breeze past moments when I'm just drastically wrong about something. I do think, in the broad scheme of things, yes, he's still maybe just okay, but also in some particulars, he is actually very impressive. Like the Yair Rodriguez comparison, again, I think really hits the nail on the head. Yair Rodriguez is a special fighter. He may not be the best fighter. There's a lot wrong with his game, but in a couple specifics, he has things that most fighters do not. And I think Sharabullet does too. So. Yeah,
but obviously to a lesser extent than.
Yeah, but it's middleweight, you know, like
amazing physical specimens we've like seen in the sport.
Yeah, but to do this much at that pace.
Yeah, for a middleweight, it is
very impressive. It really is.
Put him in the weird hair matchup with Kopylov.
Yeah, have him fight Kopylov for fun. You know, I'll just enjoy that. I'll emotionally detach myself. I'll dissociate so that I don't feel too much, and I'll just have a fun time. Or feed him to the, like, two good wrestlers in this division so that I can...
Fluffy and Hobocop.
Yeah, absolutely.
100% not going to do.
No, why would they? Okay. Well, since we don't want to talk about that one anymore, let's move on to one that will at least lift Phil's spirits. And you know what? I didn't feel too bad about this either. I thought this was quite a good performance from former flyweight champion, until recently presumed sort of half-shot former champion, Deiveson Figueiredo, against Marlon Chito Vera. Deiveson Figueiredo.
This was a good performance. I mean, this was even more so than the Sandhagen fight, because this was a performance where it was like, what are you doing, Chito? But also, this was more understandable because by this point we now know that Chito Vera is who he is, and he's never going to change.
Yeah, I mean, with that in mind, I didn't even think this was like one of Chito's worst low output performances. I thought it definitely had the shape of one where he was, the first round looked as it was going to.
Yep.
Except for the fact that I was once again impressed with Davison's wrestling. Weird that he's come up to bantamweight and now he's wrestling everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought as the fight was going on, it really had a pretty classic Cheeto fight shape. Like even the shape of the good performances, relatively speaking, where he was really coming on and he started to rip that left hook to the body a lot. And it looked like he was starting to push Davison out of the fight. Davison looked like he was really forced to conserve his energy and try to play it safe for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then he became, former flyweight, I'll remind you, the first man to knock Chiesa-Ferguson down in the UFC. Didn't see that coming.
No. Although, I guess in retrospect, like Figueiredo wasn't he like number 2 in like strikes landed to knockdown ratio at some point? It was basically like Francis Ngannou number 1.
And then flyweight.
Number 2, or like, yeah. So he is, I guess, one of the most like disproportionately powerful.
He certainly is.
Fighters we've ever seen at any weight class. Is just the fact that he'd been fighting prime Brandon Moreno for several fights.
Yeah, he certainly is. Yeah, Zane and I were talking about how, he hasn't really been finishing a lot of people in the last few years, but I think you're right. Some of that has to do with the people he's been fighting. And I think the statistic they quoted on the broadcast was he had 11 knockdowns in his UFC flyweight career, which is a high number for any division. Particularly high for flyweight. So yes, he is an unusually powerful puncher, but still, Sean O'Malley's a pretty damn hard puncher, and he fucking crushed Cheeto-Vera's skull into a different shape with a knee, and barely even hurt him. In fact, Cheeto was talking at the press conference before this event. Somebody asked him, they're like, how badly were you hurt by that knee? People were still talking about that knee. And Cheeto was like, I felt it. I knew what it was that hit me, which is a good sign that he wasn't that badly hurt. And he said by far the worst shot was in the 5th round, and that was because he got hit directly in the eye.
Yeah.
That was when he was really hurt. It still wasn't really a groggy, staggering
chin thing. Yeah,
chin type of hurt.
Yeah.
So yeah, in this he recovered very quickly, as you might expect. Everybody who relies on their chin as much as Cheeto is bound to get knocked down eventually, but he was genuinely, his legs were knocked out from under him by a right hand from Davison. That's very impressive. It is a remarkable achievement.
It is also worth considering that like just 5 rounds of getting the shit kicked out of him may have just permanently put a dent in his durability.
It's certainly possible, yeah.
One of my things that I found myself wondering is like, there's probably a reason why we haven't seen Jan Blachowicz since he fought Alex Pereira and just tanked all his shots. You can have a performance when, nothing like that happens to you in the fight, but then afterwards, you're just not the same.
Yeah, that could be part of it too.
Yeah, this also reminded me of Sterling Keita.
Of Sterling what?
It's just Sterling Keita. Like, once again, being reminded of the difference between a genuinely great championship level fighter and a tough, perpetual contender who simply expects their game to work.
Yeah.
In both cases, I was just like, well, this other guy's just too big and physical. And that's clearly how I think Keita and Vera both just thought it was going to be. Vera was just like, oh yeah, I'm just going to dominate this tiny dude.
Mm-hmm.
He can take the first round off mostly. But yeah. Figueiredo, as you said, like the wrestling, really good, very sharp.
Mm-hmm.
Managed to slow Vera even more from Cheeto's Cheeto's
to hinder his build,
slow his pace.
Yeah.
Even more than it normally is. But yeah, more than that, I also just found myself thinking like, So cannot cover distance and throw at all. This is always, I think, going to be his...
Yeah, his footwork is not really connected to his striking in any meaningful way.
He needs to... This is one of the reasons why he has, I think, these horrifically slow starts, because he simply has to move himself into position, stand there,
yeah,
and then jab and low kick. And sometimes the opponent is not there, which means he needs to move after them a bit more. And yeah, as much as, like, you know, you can criticize some people who have got, like, weird distance covering strikes, you know, they've got, like, leaping left hooks, or, like, other changes, and, you know, it can be some ugly thing that they do, or, like, you know, Frankie Edgar, like, or Eddie Alvarez, like, darting in and changing stances and occasionally getting clipped for it. They do have these things to make the opponent think about what is coming at them.
Yeah.
But Chiesa-Vera simply cannot close distance and attack at the same time, which results in just, like, a lot of following until his opponents get tired enough that they can stand in the pocket with him.
Yeah. That is absolutely true. Cheeto is one of these fighters that I've always thought of as like a sort of a gun boat. He's like he's like a turret, you know. He's got to kind of lock into position, and then he's planted, and then he can throw. Yeah, if we're going to praise Umar for great positional striking, Cheeto is in many ways an anti-positional striker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even so, you know, I didn't think Cheeto looked bad here. All things considered,
no, he just looked like Cheeto, but it was a great, you know, Figueiredo had clearly thought about how to fight this fight much more carefully than Cheeto did.
Yeah. I suppose we should keep the solvability of the Cheeto problem in mind still when projecting Davison's future success. Like, I think in ways that I didn't really credit, it's possible this is a particularly winnable matchup for Davison, where, like, being kind of... Because it was still, like his other bantamweight performances so far, it was still a fight where he looked really interested in just kind of neutralizing and limiting engagements.
Yeah.
Making the opponent lunge in, and as you just said, Cheeto is kind of particularly prone to... No, I'm going to wait because the only way you're going to... The strategy of, I'm going to wait because the only way you're going to get to me is by taking like 35 tiny steps to close the distance, and that way I can time, you know, a double leg, of which he timed a couple good ones, or a big right-hand counter or whatever. Cheeto will kind of let Davison get off the hook for whatever problems this bantamweight approach is covering for. But, you know, you can't hate...
As you said, even then, this fight hinged on basically it
really came down to that knockdown.
Hinged on a single big knockdown, yeah.
Yeah.
It hinged on, like, one big moment. You know, there's exactly the criticisms we had of the the fights with Moreno.
Yeah.
That he would find his late, you know, the fight that the rematch that he won.
Yeah.
Whichever one it was, a third fight, when he was largely losing and then just, like, found one big punch to turn things around.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think this is probably about as far as he goes. Everyone above, because Cheeto doesn't deserve his place in the division at all, and everyone above him is much, much better than him.
I mean, Cheeto's got a bunch of good wins. Cheeto's good despite himself.
Does he? What are these Cheeto good wins you speak of?
I mean, a win over Rob Font is not nothing. A win over Pedro Munoz is like, look, a lot of them are like
very debatable win over Pedro Munoz.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. Cheeto's good despite he's good
Cheeto's
despite himself.
Knee.
Yes, but you can say exactly the same thing about this win for Davison. Like, without that one right hand, that was a really chance. You were kind of starting to lose. You know, this happens. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think Figueiredo might well have lost this if it had gone, you know, if it as it should have been.
Hey, you're Mr. Clutch, Phil. That's been your thing. Mm-hmm. Talking about people having clutch. It's undeniable. Cheeto has at least a trace of clutch factor in his in his system.
Does he?
He'll produce a big moment.
Does he ever, like, really, like, come back to... I guess. He's got a little bit.
A bit, you know? Like I said, he's good despite himself. Like, he's a guy, like... I mean, like, this is who Sharabullet could be. That's the chilling thing. Somebody where you just keep seeing these problems, but, like, ooh, he keeps pulling it out. God damn it. That must be it. This is, you feel about Cheeto, purely for his fighting style, the way I feel about Nurmagomedov, except I justify that hatred with him being a shitty guy. For you, it's enough that I have to watch him being bad.
Yeah, and that he gets... so, like, Marlon Vera's recent career is a loss to Davison Figueiredo, an absolute shit-kicking by Sean O'Malley.
Yeah.
A very sketchy decision win over Pedro Munoz.
Yes, it's
who
true.
is nowhere near the prime of his career. A quite decisive loss to Sandhagen. And then aged Dominic Cruz riding his chin to victory over Rob Font. Aged Frankie Edgar. Davy Grant. That's a good win. It's an okay win. Davy Grant. And just lost to Jose Aldo in a fight which was shockingly similar to this Davison Figueiredo one. Weird win over Sean O'Malley. Sketchy decision for Song Yadong. Like, and then it's just people who aren't very good. All that. Like, he just doesn't have any signature wins apart from a close... Like, I think his best performance is, like, just the close fight with Song Yadong, which you might argue that he won.
Yeah.
I think we agree that he probably did.
Yeah. Well, Cheeto's
Other than
definitely...
that, it's just old people. Old people and then him getting figured out.
You know how we used to have, for the handies, there used to be the Rebush Chalice? Mm-hmm. For things that I like to see. I think for this year's upcoming handies, we should just have Haters Corner. Where we just let you off the chain, Phil. Because this is, I mean, to a certain extent, you can draw asterisks on how often do we say after a fight that it is equal parts or close to equal parts, one guy looking good, one guy looking bad. That is such a common refrain. And every time we have, almost every time we have a big win, it like reflects on one guy's upward trajectory, the other guy's downward trajectory. I think you would not find many records of like non-champion fighters where their resumes are full of title defenses against people in peak form. Other than them, you wouldn't find many records where you can't go through their wins and with the benefit of hindsight be like, oh, well, actually, this guy was old, that guy stopped being good after that, so on, so on, so on. I think Cheeto's been a pretty successful bantamweight at a high level. I don't disagree that his game is supremely dysfunctional in a sort of Leon Edwards kind of way. It makes his success more remarkable. 'Cause like, this shit should not be working. And it's worked really quite well.
Hasn't really though, has it? Just lost to every contender that he's fought. He's never actually beaten one. He's just smoked old guys, and then they've thrown him into and scraped by Pedro, and then they threw him into a title shot.
Yeah,
above again much more deserving people.
I hear you.
I don't mind Cheeto. He just needs to get out of the rankings.
You don't mind Cheeto?
I don't know why he's in these fights.
The lies a hater tells himself. Now Phil doesn't mind Cheeto. You hate him. You loathe him.
I don't know why he's like...
You resent him. That's what it is.
I resent his positioning, yes.
Yeah.
Like, why is he two spots above Jose Aldo and one spot above Song Yadong in the rankings, for example?
I get that. Yeah, no, I get that. He's certainly, for whatever reason, he has enjoyed more success than it feels he really deserves.
Even in fights where you're like, oh, wow, he's got this one in the bag, he still manages to come out and just Cheeto it up.
Yeah, it's true. Well, he's probably never getting back to a title shot now. Maybe this will begin his plummet down the rankings. But crushed in a title fight, convincingly beaten, if not, uncompetitively, by Davison Figueiredo. And I'll be very curious to see what Figueiredo looks like going forward. I mean, who do you think he might fight? You talked about...
I think they should do Umar Figueiredo.
Umar, yeah. I would be happy to see that. I think, depending on the timing, when is O'Malley Dvalishvili supposed to happen?
I do not know.
I think it's coming up this fall, I want to say, like relatively soon. Although with Sean's penchant for injuries, who knows what could happen? Let's see. That's booked for, September 14th. So next month. Depending on how things shake out there, I would be perfectly happy to see Umar get a title shot over that supremely impressive win over Sandhagen. But if that doesn't happen, if they, something happens and they do a rematch, which seems perfectly likely, I would love to see Umar Davison. 100%.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think either of them really... I don't think either of them, deserve to fight anyone other than each other or for the belt at this point.
Yeah.
Who else is there? Jan. Either one of them can fight Jan.
Jan is good. Do Davis and Jan and let Umar have a title shot. That's what I say.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, with that, let's take one more break. We are not going to have much time left when we come back for the next segment, so we'll have to pick one to focus on probably and then just maybe mention some others. But we will be back to talk about something else after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Just a couple quick hits here to close out the show. Michael Chiesa returned from a pretty considerable layoff. Weirdly, I think a longer layoff than Tony Ferguson had. To fight Tony Ferguson here on the main card. A booking that just sent a shiver down your spine. Just as it does every time, you have to reckon with the fact that Tony Ferguson is still fighting, and I think Tony Ferguson is still fighting. He did some weird thing where he took off one glove.
Yeah.
And left it in the octagon, which seems like just a very Tony Ferguson gesture, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah.
But, Tony Ferguson, one last stab, let it be, where he's like, I know, I'll move up to welterweight. Surely that will solve my issues. And it did not.
No, against a former lightweight, no less.
Yeah, no kidding. Although it has to be said, who even then looked a little bigger than Tony.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Chiesa was a huge lightweight.
Yeah. He was a huge lightweight who then just, filled out Jake Matthews style.
Yeah.
Once he went to welterweight, and you were like, yeah, that guy is never, ever, ever making 155 again.
Yep. Your body would not let you after that transformation. So, what did you make of it? Anything you took away other than, it's just another predictable loss for Tony?
Get fucked, Michael Chiesa. He was put in there for one reason and one reason only. So that he could be a giant submission grappler who could mercifully tap out Tony Ferguson without damaging him too much, and making everyone sad. Instead, he was like, "Oh, you know what would be cool? Have a real MMA fight with Tony Ferguson's corpse." Maybe it was a respect thing. Maybe it was like, yeah, I'm gonna...
I think it probably was. I think a lot of fighters have a lot of respect for Tony.
Yep. It probably was a respect thing, but it also wasn't what he was there for. He was there to put Tony Ferguson out of his misery. He wasn't there to like... It's like, you've got to put old Yeller down and just like start playing catch with him. Throwing the stick for the dog and playing around with him. No, don't give him false hope. Shoot him in the head.
I thought you were going
to say about this.
I thought you were going to say
when you taken him down immediately and tapped him out, Michael Chiesa.
I thought you were going to say when you have to put Old Yeller down, you don't kick him to death.
That is also true. Yes.
Jesus Christ, shoot him in the head for fuck's sake. No, I think probably from Chiesa's perspective, the idea that he would take mercy on Tony Ferguson was so disrespectful that it never crossed his mind. I think he took Tony Ferguson very seriously and respectfully as an opponent, and that's why he had a real fight with him where he just beat him every which way.
I don't know. I feel like he would have, if this was like prime Tony Ferguson, he would have shot a lot earlier. He shot on RDA pretty quickly.
Well,
remember,
he would have been compelled to by a prime Tony Ferguson. There would have been some insane pressure coming at him.
Yeah, so he was like, here we are, we're fighting, we're doing stuff.
Yeah,
like kickbox a little bit, and then he just made a nod towards grappling. And instantly tapped Tony Ferguson out, as we all knew would happen.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't draw it out that long. I can't be too mad at Mike for that.
Still unacceptable. Acceptable. Should have just done it immediately.
All right. Well, I really, really hope Tony Ferguson retires. I mean, with a guy like Tony Ferguson, it is very difficult to imagine what else he would possibly do with his life. I'm sure this is a problem that consciously or otherwise Tony himself has
Broadcasting.
Broadcasting? Podcasting.
Amp shit only podcast.
That'll be good.
Where he just says insane stuff. I'm sure it would be popular.
Probably. Yeah. Probably be a window into the mind of Tony Ferguson that many of us wish we didn't have. Within the first 3 episodes.
I wouldn't listen to it, but I think he could do it.
Yeah, he might find some success doing that. I mean, and podcasting's not a real job. Like, that would be good for Tony.
That's true.
He could still just train and enjoy. I think he probably still enjoys training.
Yeah.
He likes to test himself.
I think he would enjoy it more without the
pressure
of feeling like there was competition at the end of it.
That's what I mean. Yeah, I think the trying crazy shit in the gym and pushing his limits is the thing he really likes. It's just the fact that he's now been locked into this cycle where it's always leading towards the depths of despair and depression when he just gets completely...
Did I hear that he was like throwing up from nerves before this fight?
Just retire, man. Like, let it go. Like,
it is record-breaking losing streak, right? It's eight fights in a row now?
Probably. No one else has been allowed to lose.
It's basically going to be as long as his legendary winning streak that got him to the belt.
That is
got him to the interim belt.
That is a depressing comparison. Yeah, I think he won 10 straight, maybe?
Something like that.
Yeah. He's coming close. I mean, it's just been very clear in his fights. We've talked about this a good bit, that he's not enjoying fighting anymore. He just can't. It's like I think this happens to a lot of fighters, but it's particularly dramatic with Tony, and that he just he feels he needs to go out on a win. He needs to get one more. And you're a mortal man. At a certain point you die, you can't reach the end of your life and be like, I just need one more day and then I'll die. At a certain point you run out. Everything runs out. And Tony Ferguson has run out of whatever juice is needed to continue being a professional fighter. And I rarely ask for fighters to retire. It's just, I think it would be much better for him, and I think he'd be much happier if he did it.
Yep.
That's my outsider perspective. Okay, well,
just let it go. And I think the UFC agree. You know, they've given him chances at beating, a chance of beating bad people like Paddy or old people, people of his generation. Now they're just like, no, we're just going to give you like big grapplers who will snuff you quickly and painlessly.
Yeah,
they're no longer like even looking for ways to get him wins because they know that's not possible.
Yeah, I mean, he's now being put into fights like this. Fight doesn't even do anything.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't do anything for anyone. Michael Chiesa doesn't have any title aspirations. He's he's about to retire himself and just be like a UFC broadcaster. So, like, why? What is the point of going in there and just getting snuffed by Michael Chiesa? Doesn't even do anything for him, really, except a fond memory down the line.
Yep.
All right, well, last one to discuss then. A very fun fight. On the opening spot of the main card, Joel Alvarez took on Alvarez-Brener. I think Alvarez-Brener may go down. Boy, he still has a black name on Wikipedia. Jesus.
Really?
Yeah. What does it take? This guy's been in so many bangers. Holy fuck. How is Joel Alvarez blue and Alvarez-Brener's not? I guess he's been here longer. Alvarez-Brener may go down as the ultimate example of why you should not overrate a fighter based on a good showing and a loss.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not like writing the dude off. I'm just saying that, seeing this and the Arolbi fight before it, shit, even the way that the Kutateladze fight played out for him. This is not a sustainable way of actually getting wins. It's pretty clear, and he's a guy who's always going to look impressive in moments and is always going to go for it when he's losing a fight. But he simply could not consistently deal with with Joel Alvarez's insistence on having a long range fight. Alvarez, as Zane put it, Alvarez is kind of like a trap setting fighter, right? His ground game, his submission game is like, you lunge into me and I'll be big and tall and get like a guillotine or whatever. Or I'll run you into a knee. And then otherwise, I'm just going to be really, really patient and reserved and poke you with painful long-range strikes and force you to overcommit. And this was a problem that Brener just couldn't deal with. That Alvarez was
I'm
just...
not sure I really think of Alvarez in that kind of... I mostly just think of Alvarez as just an extremely violent fighter.
Oh, he certainly is.
Yeah.
But in terms of what he's doing as a long-range striker... He's not like an overwhelming pressure fighter. He's not like a huge volume fighter. He's really quite patient. It's just that he crushes you when you step into his wheelhouse. Disagree with that?
I mean, to an extent. I mean, he's not a counter fighter.
No,
I wouldn't necessarily say, because he's Brener is quite aggressive, and Alvarez just pushed him back to the cage the whole time this fight. I mean, yeah, mostly I just think of him as like an overwhelmingly, he's just an all offense, no defense giant.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of who I would appropriately compare him to. I mean, weirdly enough, he's not dissimilar to Charles Oliveira. He's just, in some ways just more exaggerated than Oliveira. Yeah, he's just like a huge guy who's a straight puncher who's, if he gets people down, he then just smashes them from top position or taps them out.
Absolutely.
He's dangerous in the clinch. I think the issue is that obviously he doesn't have doesn't have the quality of Charles Oliveira, especially when it comes to if he gets put on his own back.
Yeah.
As we saw when Tsarukian just obliterated him. But yeah, he's just, I just think of him as, and this was the problem for Brener, I think, in this fight, is that, like, it's possible to be losing to, like, Guram Kutateladze, who is very much who is a sort of, often a one and done, sharp striker, but who will give you time and space to come back and overwhelm you.
Yeah.
But, like, if your whole thing is going to be like, I'm going to tank your offense and then come back on you, and you're fighting Joel Alvarez.
Yeah.
That is an extremely dangerous thing to do.
Basically just walking you down, keeping you on the end of his reach the entire time, and just racking up damage.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this is what I mean, he didn't really...
He fought Moises, and Moises was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna neutralize Joel Alvarez. No.
Yeah, terrible idea. Yeah, I think the thing is, like, this didn't even have the tenor of the fights that Brener has been able to work himself back into, like the fight with Arolbi or Kutateladze. There was no brawl was offered to Elves-Brener.
Mm-hmm.
He was not offered a lot of opportunities to exchange. I think Alvarez, like, yes, I think he's aggressive, but he's a pretty staid fighter in terms of his actual striking output. He picks his spots. And it's mostly one and done, and then I'm going to get back to my range, and the threat is still there, so either back up or I'm going to hit you again. And Brener just couldn't, get off the back foot and couldn't find a way in off the back foot. And he wasn't given many ways in either. Like, Alvarez, you want to beat a guy like Alvarez, I think you have to absolutely take it to him. And maybe it's possible for Brener to manufacture that kind of fight, but clearly it didn't come naturally to confront the gigantic Alvarez with that kind of aggression.
Yeah.
All right, well...
Yeah, Alvarez remains a pretty cool fighter. Yeah, I mean, I think he's also just someone who's going to continue to have, like, extremely binary fight outcomes.
Yes.
Either his approach works, in which case his opponent just gets absolutely obliterated because he's, just three-dimensional violence that they can't hack at all, or they can, break their way through his game like Tsarukian did, and then they're just going to splatter him.
Mm-hmm. Although, to be fair, there aren't a ton of people who can do it exactly like Tsarukian did it.
No, that is very true, especially not in the modern lightweight division.
Yeah. All right, well, I think that will have to do it for Nurmagomedov versus Sandhagen and its undercard. A lot of really impressive performances. Some of them unfortunate, but impressive. Mm-hmm. But impressive nonetheless. And we saw, I think, the emergence of a bona fide new top contender in the main event. So I'm very, very excited to see what Umar Nurmagomedov does next. I hope also that Corey Sandhagen can get back on track. I mean, at least the bright side for a guy like him is that he's been floating around the top of the division for so long that he's at most no more than 1 or 2 decent wins away from being back in the title conversation. So I hope that we can see him recalibrate or perhaps just get an opponent against whom this newly sort of cautious defensive style will work. But it did not work against a more principled striking performance from Umar. Next week, we have a card that we didn't even bother to mention, and not without reason, because it may in fact be the worst fight night card the UFC has scheduled to date.
It's shockingly bad.
It is. It's so bad that I didn't even remember any of the fights. I didn't even remember the whole main event. I remembered that Tibora was there, and that's mostly because you called him an oversized hobbit last week, and that's been stuck in my head. Other than that, I did not remember what was happening. Fortunately, immediately after that, we're getting UFC 305, which is Dricus du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya. And that is actually a real card with some other good fights on it and an incredibly, phenomenally stupid main event. So I'm looking forward to talking about that one next week. I hope all you out there listening feel the same. Until then, make sure to check out the Heavy Hands Patreon. Episode 2 of the July 2024 Heavy Henka Sumo Tournament Series has been released with Miguel Class. We talked a week ago about the first 7 days of the July 2024 tournament, and now we rejoined forces to recap and discuss all of the crazy stuff that happened in the final 8 days of the tournament. Sorry, I had to figure out what numbers added up to 15 there for a second. That's the pause you heard. So that's a lot of fun. Always great to talk about sumo with Miguel, and we had a really good time. And it's sumo, so you're always putting it in context of this massive history, and we got to see the Seoul Yokozuna, that being basically the sumo equivalent of a champion, have a incredibly resurgent performance of a kind which seemed out of reach because he doesn't have working knees. And he won his first Emperor's Cup in a long time at this tournament, but it still came down to the wire. It was very exciting. A lot of really scrappy bouts, and a lot of big underdogs showed up big. So make sure you go over to the Heavy Hands Patreon, check out Heavy Henka, and also check out facepunching.substack.com. I have a long-delayed Bilal Muhammad Leon Edwards write-up coming. I'm also going to try to crank out something quick to just drool over Umar Nurmagomedov's jab and positional work. The only thing I write and or talk about, but I just keep seeing so many good examples of it. So check out facepunching.substack.com and find us on Twitter at Evil Greg Jackson, at Boxing Bush. And until next week, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.